There is a man who drives a 12-year-old Honda, wears the same 3 shirts on rotation, and orders water at every restaurant. And he has more money than 98% of the people reading this sentence right now. Meanwhile, there's a guy 2 lanes over in a leased Mercedes, fresh sneakers, phone always the newest model. And he is, technically, broke. Not going through a rough patch broke. Structurally, mathematically broke. Here's the problem. You have been trained your whole life to read wealth backwards. You look at the car, the watch, the shoes, and your brain goes rich. You look at the beat-up sedan and the worn-out backpack, and your brain goes struggling. And that instinct is costing you, not just in judgment, in decisions. Because if you're benchmarking your financial life against the wrong signals, you will spend your whole life chasing a costume instead of the thing the costume is supposed to represent. So today, I'm going to show you 10 signs, real signs, the ones that actually show up in someone's bank account, not their Instagram, that tell you someone is genuinely rich, even if they look completely broke. And by the end of this, you're not just going to be able to spot it in other people. You're going to be able to check, quietly, honestly, whether you're already becoming one of them, or whether you've been performing wealth instead of building it. Let me tell you about the moment this really clicked for me. A few years back, I knew 2 guys. Let's call them Sam and Marcus. Not their real names, but real people, real story. Sam had the apartment with the view, the car with the paddle shifters, the Saturday brunches that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Marcus lived in a 1-bedroom, drove a Corolla that had 200,000 kilometers on it, and packed his own lunch every single day. If you'd asked a room full of strangers to guess which one was doing better, every hand goes up for Sam, every single one. Except Marcus had over $400,000 sitting quietly across a brokerage account and a retirement account. Sam had $11,000 in savings and about $31,000 in credit card and auto loan debt. Sam wasn't rich. Sam was renting the appearance of rich, 1 monthly payment at a time. And here's the part that should scare you a little. Sam didn't know it either. He genuinely believed he was doing well because the number that mattered to him wasn't his net worth. It was how his life looked from the outside. That's the trap. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how to avoid falling into it, and exactly what the quiet, boring, invisible signs of real money actually look like. I'm not going to bury the lead on you. I'll tell you right now, some of these signs are going to feel completely backwards from what you've been taught. But stick with me, because the order I'm giving you these in actually matters. Each one builds on the last, and by sign number 7, you're going to see something about your own habits you probably haven't looked at honestly in years. Oh, and quick thing before we go further. If you're the kind of person who actually wants to get better with money instead of just watching a video about it, hit subscribe now, because this channel is basically a slow-motion finance education disguised as entertainment, and I don't want you to miss the next one. Okay, let's get into it. Here's the picture I want you to hold in your head for the rest of this video. An iceberg. Above the waterline, you've got the car, the clothes, the vacations, the Saturday brunch photos. That's maybe 10% of the iceberg. It's the part everyone can see, and it's also, and this is the part that trips people up, the cheapest, easiest part to fake. You can finance a car with bad credit. You can put a vacation on a credit card. You can look rich for about $4,000 a month if you're willing to go into debt to do it. But below the waterline, the 90% that's actually holding the whole thing up, that's the stuff nobody sees. That's the retirement account nobody photographs. That's the emergency fund nobody posts about. That's the debt that doesn't exist because it was never taken on in the first place. Real wealth lives below the waterline. Fake wealth lives entirely above it, floating on nothing. And here's the scary part. Icebergs like that don't sink slowly. They flip all at once, usually the moment a job is lost or a car breaks down or an emergency room bill shows up. I'm going to come back to this iceberg 2 more times before we're done, because every single sign I'm about to show you is really just asking one question. Is this above the waterline or below it? Let's start with sign number 1. They know their number, down to the dollar. Ask a genuinely wealthy person, quietly, privately, what's your net worth? And most of the time they'll tell you within a few $1,000s, not because they're bragging, because they check regularly. It's a number they track the way some people track their step count. Ask the person who looks rich the same question, and you'll usually get one of two things, either a wildly inflated guess or complete silence, because they've never actually run the math. And there's a reason for that. If you're carrying debt to fund your lifestyle, doing the math is the last thing you want to do, because the math would tell you the truth, and the truth is uncomfortable. Not knowing your number isn't neutral. It's a decision, even if it doesn't feel like one. Here's a stat that surprised me when I first read it. A Fidelity Investor Insights survey found that only around 35% of Americans could correctly estimate their own net worth within a 10% margin when asked. 2/3 of people are essentially flying blind on the single most important financial number of their life. Sign number 2. Their car is a tool, not a trophy. Genuinely wealthy people, statistically, drive incredibly boring cars. Not always, well, there are exceptions. But the pattern is strong enough that it shows up in research on millionaire households again and again. The reason is simple math. A car is a depreciating asset. The moment you drive it off the lot, it starts bleeding value. A $40,000 car isn't a $40,000 asset. It's a $40,000 hole that you're slowly filling back in with monthly payments while the hole gets deeper every year. The person who looks broke but is actually rich understands this instinctively. They see a car as transportation. The person who looks rich but is actually broke sees a car as a costume, and costumes are expensive to rent. Sign number 3. They have an I quit tomorrow number. And it's funded. This is the emergency fund, but I want you to think about it differently than save 3 to 6 months of expenses, because that phrase has become so overused it stopped meaning anything. Think of it instead as, if your income disappeared completely tomorrow, job gone, business gone, whatever it is, how many days could you keep living exactly the way you're living right now, without borrowing a single dollar from anyone? For the genuinely wealthy person, that number is usually measured in months, sometimes years. For the person performing wealth, that number is often measured in days. Sometimes it's negative, meaning if their income stopped today, they'd be in the hole before the week was out. And here's where it gets interesting. This single number, the I quit tomorrow number, predicts financial stress better than almost any other metric, because it's the number that determines whether a single bad month turns into a manageable inconvenience or a full-blown crisis. But that's not even the scary part. The scary part is coming in the next block, when we talk about what happens inside someone's brain once they start living below that line for years at a time, because it doesn't just change their bank account, it changes how they see themselves. Let's talk about the psychology, because this is the part most people skip completely, and it's honestly the most important block in this whole video. Sign number 4. They don't flinch at a $400 surprise. Picture this. Car breaks down, needs a $400 repair, no warning, no planning. For a genuinely wealthy person, even one who looks completely unremarkable, this is an annoyance, mildly irritating, forgotten by dinner. For the person performing wealth, this is a 5-alarm event. It might mean a credit card that's already near its limit gets pushed further. It might mean a payday-style loan. It might mean an uncomfortable phone call to a parent. The Federal Reserve's own report on the economic well-being of U.S. households has tracked this exact question for years, and it consistently finds that a meaningful chunk of adults, even ones with solid-looking incomes, say they could not cover a $400 emergency expense with cash or its equivalent. Now here's the assumption I want to flip for you. You'd think that the people who panic over a $400 bill are the ones with low incomes, and the people who shrug it off are the ones with high incomes. That's the assumption almost everyone holds, but it's not actually true. Some of the most anxious, cash-strapped people making these panicked decisions are earning 6 figures, And some of the calmest people, financially, are earning a fraction of that. The $400 reaction isn't about how much money comes in, it's about how much of it stays. Sign number 5. Their identity isn't attached to their spending. This is the deepest one, so stay with me. When you spend money to feel something, to feel successful, to feel seen, to feel like you've made it, you've attached your identity to a number that goes down every time you swipe a card. That's an incredibly fragile place to build a sense of self because the feeling fades within days, and then you need another purchase to get it back. Psychologists call pieces of this the hedonic treadmill. You buy the thing, you feel great for a week, then you're right back to baseline, except now you also have a payment. The genuinely wealthy person, the quiet, boring, $400,000 Corolla driving person, has usually, at some point, consciously or unconsciously, detached their self-worth from their spend. Their identity is built on something sturdier, a skill, a relationship, a habit, a track record, which means they don't need the purchase to feel okay. And ironically, that's exactly the mental state that makes it easiest to keep accumulating money, because you're not leaking it out the side trying to patch an identity hole. Sign number 6, the everyday moment, the coffee, the lunch, the small stuff. Let's make this real with something small. 2 people, same income, same job. One of them buys a $5 coffee every single workday without a second thought, not because $5 is going to make or break them, but because they've never actually asked whether that habit, compounded, is quietly working against them. $5 a day, invested instead of spent at a historical stock market average return, turns into roughly $75,000 over 30 years. Not from the coffee. From the decision pattern the coffee represents, the other person isn't necessarily denying themselves coffee. Genuinely wealthy people are not monks, and this isn't a video telling you to suffer. The difference is, they've made that decision on purpose once and moved on instead of making a fresh, tiny, unexamined decision every single morning that slowly bleeds them without them noticing. But here's where it gets interesting. This pattern shows up in something much bigger than coffee. It shows up in the biggest financial mistake almost everyone makes, and I'm about to show you exactly what that is, because it's coming up in the next block, and it might be the single most expensive habit on this entire list. Okay, this is the big one. This is the sign that once you see it, you can't unsee it in the people around you. Sign number 7. They own assets that produce money while they sleep. This is the actual dividing line between looks rich and is rich. It's not the income. Plenty of people performing wealth have big incomes, sometimes bigger than the person who's actually wealthy. The dividing line is, does the money you already have go out and make more money on its own without you doing anything? Rental property collecting rent. Index funds collecting dividends and growing in value. A small stake in a business that pays out whether you show up or not. This is what below the waterline wealth actually looks like in practice. It's not a pile of cash sitting still. It's a pile of cash that's working 24 hours a day, including while its owner is asleep, including on holidays, including on the day the owner gets sick and can't go to work. Sign number 8. Their spending grows slower than their income. This is called lifestyle creep, and it is, without exaggeration, the single most common way people who should have become wealthy never do. Someone gets a raise, 20% more income, and their spending quietly climbs by 22%, because now they deserve the nicer apartment, the nicer car, the nicer everything. Income goes up. Net worth stays exactly where it was, or worse. The genuinely wealthy person does the opposite, almost as a reflex. Income goes up 20%, spending goes up maybe 5%. That 15% gap is where the entire iceberg gets built, year after year, below the waterline where nobody's watching. Sign number 9. They can tell you what they're saying no to. Ask someone who's actually building wealth what they said no to last month, and they'll usually have an answer immediately. A trip, an upgrade, a subscription, something specific. Ask the person performing wealth the same question, and you'll often get a long pause because they've never really said no to anything. Every yes felt small in the moment. It's only when you stack a year of small yeses together that you see the real cost. Sign number 10. Their money has a job before it arrives. This is the last one, and it ties every other sign together. Genuinely wealthy people, in one form or another, decide where their money is going before it lands in their account. Savings, investments, bills, then spending, in that order. The person performing wealth does it in reverse. Spending happens first, and whatever's left over, if anything's left over, is what savings is allowed to be. One version treats saving as the leftover. The other treats spending as the leftover. Same income, completely different endings. One warning before we close this out. Don't take any of this list and swing to the opposite extreme. Depriving yourself of every single joy, refusing every coffee, living like it's a competition to spend the least money possible. That's not wealth either. That's just a different kind of costume, and it's just as hollow if it's not backed by an actual plan. The goal was never to spend zero. The goal was always to spend on purpose. So let's bring the iceberg back one last time. Every single one of these 10 signs lives below the waterline. None of them show up in a photo, none of them get a like, none of them impress a stranger at a red light. And that's exactly why almost nobody chases them, because our brains are wired to chase what gets noticed, and the things that actually build wealth are, almost by design, invisible. Here's the bonus thought I want to leave you with, because I promised you'd get more than what the title promised. The people on this list who look broke, but are actually rich, most of them didn't start with more money than everyone else. What they started with was a willingness to be unimpressive for a decade, to drive the boring car while other people upgraded, to keep buying index funds during the years the market did nothing exciting, to let their money sit quietly below the surface while everyone else was busy decorating the tip of the iceberg. You don't need a bigger income to start this. You need a smaller gap between what you make and what you spend, and the patience to let that gap sit there and grow, unseen, for longer than feels natural. Somewhere out there right now, someone in a 10-year-old car with $300,000 quietly sitting in an index fund is about to pull up next to someone in a brand new car who's 4 payments behind, and only one of them is actually rich. Make sure, 10 years from now, it's you.